guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Beth. I am a 37-year-old attorney living in the DC area with my husband. And today's video is going to be all about brushes. So you may have seen that recently I posted a poll on my community tab where I asked if you consider yourself a kitchen gadget person, meaning you like those kind of single or specialty use kitchen gadgets for a particular task in the kitchen, how many brushes you use. So the reason I asked that is because I was planning to do this video all about brushes, and I was kind of counting up the number of brushes I typically use for a full face of makeup. And I am definitely the type of person where I like to find the ideal tool for the job. So I definitely have my favorite brushes that I've been using for a while, but new types of brushes always come onto the market. So I like to compare those brushes to kind of my old favorites to figure out whether the new brush might be an improvement for my makeup application. So in this video, I am going to share with you some brushes that I recently picked up from BK Beauty, Rephr, Goss, and Saie. And I should mention that I purchased all of these brushes myself. I know that Rephr and BK Beauty in particular send out a lot of PR, but I did purchase all of these myself. BK Beauty had a Mother's Day sale not too long ago where they had 20% off their website, so I picked up a few brushes that I had my eye on. And then Rephr Brushes also had a site-wide 40% off sale, I believe. So I took advantage of that as well. So this isn't the first time that I have purchased from either of those brands. You'll see as I do my makeup that I have a assortment of different brushes from Rephr in particular. So the way that I've kind of structured this video is that I am going to put some of these new brushes that I purchased to the test against some of my old favorites. So the new brushes that I've purchased, I've used those on the right side of my face, so this side, and the older brushes that I've probably been using for months or more, I've used on the left side of my face. So I thought that would be an interesting way to kind of test out whether these new brushes would be an improvement. So before we get into the haul portion, I thought I would just share with you the results of that poll that I mentioned. So the question was, do you consider yourself a kitchen gadget person, e.g., would you reach for a garlic press over a knife? If so, how many brushes or sponges do you typically use to do your makeup? So there were 33 votes and 6% said none. I just use my fingers to apply makeup. And I don't think we can overlook the functionality that we do get from our fingers, especially with certain types of formulas, as we'll see. So none, 6%. The bulk of the votes, 58%, were 1 to 5, which was interesting. Next was 15% saying 6 to 10 brushes, and then 9% said 11 or more, and I definitely fall into that category when I'm doing a full face. And then finally we had 12% saying I'm a minimalist in the kitchen, no gadgets for me. So that was kind of the not applicable type category. So I mentioned that I usually use 11 or more, especially if I'm doing a full face, but of course, you know, I don't do a full face every day. So the number may vary according to kind of what I'm doing. But anyway, I thought that was really interesting, and I do appreciate everyone who participated in that poll. Personally, I do use a garlic press more often than not, but there are some gadgets or tools that I purchased, like an avocado slicer type thing, where I think I decluttered it because it was just taking up room, and I think a knife actually does better for me with that task. Okay, so let's get into the haul portion. So I'll just quickly run through what I've purchased, and then we'll get into the demo where you will be able to see these brushes in action. So for Rephr Beauty, I purchased 4 items. The first was their brush soap, and no, it didn't come in this container. So it's a black soap, and I have used it, as you maybe can tell. And I think they said it was like specifically designed for kind of their natural hair brushes. My kind of go-to is the Beauty Blender cleanser, which I've gone through several of. You can see this one is getting down there as well. So I have used this, like I said, and I'm not sure it did as good a job as my Beauty Blender cleanser. Like, I think I used it on this Real Techniques foundation brush, and I think you can see there's still either some product in there or it's stained. I'm not sure which, but yeah, I might have to give that another go with the Beauty Blender cleanser to see if it gets it out. But yeah, I like it. I just wish that Rephr would sell a kind of soap dish type thing. So this is an old like travel size body butter. This was 1.6 ounces from the Body Shop, just to give you an idea of like the type of container that might fit this soap. Actually, oops, fits it pretty well. And I even have that little kind of beauty blender silicone type thing in there. So yeah, so it does the job, but it would be nice if Rephr had the option of purchasing something like that. I wouldn't need it like every time I bought the soap. Like I think the Beauty Blender soap always comes in this kind of package. For environmental reasons, I'm fine if I don't like get a new tin every time, but anyway. They have their like modular vanity system, so I think they would have like the capability to design a soap dish or like the manufacturing kind of connections or whatever, but anyway. And then I got 3 brushes. I got another number 2 brush, which is what I use for my swatching video. So I use this for matte shades, and I got another one just in case the other ones are dirty. So I got that. And I think this number 2 brush, by the way, is 100% natural goat hair, and it is, I think, handmade in Japan. So the next brush is the number 24 brush, and I think this is also probably goat hair, handmade in Japan. And I think this is kind of supposed to imitate the old Tom Ford cheek brush, from what I understand. Kind of like the Rephr number 22 brush, which is my go-to bronzer brush. And I think this is currently 40% off in their concept store, which I'll talk about in a minute. And they've kind of gone from this silver ferrule to the matte black, which is nice. But yeah, I think this was supposed to be like the Tom Ford bronzer brush, and Tom Ford has, I think, since gone to synthetic brushes. So I'll just go a little shed. So the new Tom Ford brushes might not be what they used to be, I guess. So I got this in case I needed something to pick up like a more densely pressed blush or like a Baked Gelée type formula. So I think that'll be nice. It feels nice and soft. So a word on the concept store. So Rephr does this thing where they did just have a site-wide 40% off sale that I think even like new customers could take advantage of. But they also have something called the concept store, which is where they have certain brushes available for sale at like 40% off, where you can purchase them if you agree to give feedback on the brush, essentially. So Rephr kind of started off, I think they might have started off as a Kickstarter actually, but they have kind of come out with like iterations of brushes. So for example, you see the difference between this brush and this. So they've kind of changed their like materials and that kind of thing. But they've kind of tweaked the shapes of certain brushes over the years, kind of based on customer feedback. So yeah, so that's a good way to get brushes at a discount. And once you have placed orders from Rephr, I think you even have the ability to, they have like a secret store you can go into that's specific to your account, and then you can get additional items at a discount. And I think even if you like leave X number of feedback forms, then you have like the ability to get basically anything at 40% off. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is don't get sticker shock. Make sure to check out the concept store, and I think they're definitely a brand worth looking at. Okay, so BK Beauty by contrast is it's a all vegan, cruelty-free brand. Started by Lisa J here on YouTube. Lisa J has been on YouTube for years, and she started this vegan brush company. So she recently did a collab with Angie Hot and Flashy. And these were originally sold as a bundle, but they made them available as individuals. So I got their angled blush brush, A507, like so. And then I also got their concealer brush, the A506. I think this is kind of the most hyped brush from this collection, and it's kind of a mini version of their BK101. So this is technically, I think, a foundation brush, but I use it more for contour. So yeah, so got the concealer brush. Also got this A505, which is for like shimmer shadows, and the BK208. So this isn't part of a collaboration, it's part of the BK like normal line. So yeah, so as you may be able to tell from the Hot and Flashy channel name, Angie kind of, I think her content is mostly targeted towards like more mature women. And Angie designed these brushes with like the older consumer in mind. So they're supposed to be kind of really forgiving on, I guess, more delicate skin, that kind of thing. So they're definitely brushes that anyone can use, but that was kind of the, I think, inspiration behind those. So that was it from BK Beauty. And then I got one brush from Saie during the Sephora VIP sale. And that is the Saie, I don't even know what this is called, powder brush. So this is, I think, a entirely synthetic brush. And you'll see me use this later in the video. I also got the Saie powder that I think this came out with. And then the last brush is the Goss number 4. So I got this because Rick Clark always used it for highlighter, so I wanted to try this one out. So yeah, those are all the brushes I picked up. So without further ado, let's get into the demo. Alright guys, so funny story. I had recorded this portion with an external mic and I later found out that the mic wasn't fully plugged in, so I didn't have any audio on this portion of the video. So I'm recording a voiceover now, so if I'm not entirely sure what I was trying to tell you at the time, then that is why. But basically this portion is going to be comparing the effect that these 3 different brushes have when applying shimmer or metallic shades. So I'm talking here about the Angie Hot and Flashy, the A505 brush. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, this is an entirely synthetic brush from BK Beauty. So that is that brush, and then this one is the Rephr number 2, I believe, and that is not one that I use for shimmer or metallics. That is what I use to swatch matte shadows. And this other Rephr brush that I'm showing you is the number 28. I think I actually forgot to tell you about this one in the haul portion, but basically I've been using a different Rephr brush, the number 21, that I will show you in a moment. Here I'm comparing the 28 to the number 2, and again I've been using the number 2 for matte shadows when I'm doing my swatch videos. So just comparing the shape and size of those 2 brushes. But yeah, so the purpose is going to be comparing this new Angie Hot and Flashy with the new Rephr brush, especially compared to the Rephr brush I have been using. So taking this Angie Hot and Flashy out of the packaging and comparing it to the number 28 brush. I think I actually looked up the bristle length of these different brushes. And that is the Rephr number 21 that I have been using, as you may have seen in my swatch videos. So those are the 3 right there that I'm going to compare with the metallic shadows. So I think out of those, the Angie Hot and Flashy is definitely the longest. And both the Angie and the Rephr 21 are pretty thin. I think there's a little bit more heft to that number 28 from Rephr. So like I said, the BK Beauty is entirely synthetic, but the Rephr 21 is a mix of natural and synthetic fibers, and it has a bristle length of 11.5 millimeters. It says it's an impactful shader designed for shimmers and cream products. So that is the number 21. And the 28, which is the newer one to me, that has a bristle length of 11 millimeters. It says it's for liquids, creams, and shimmers, and it says it's a variant of our flagship shader brush number 2, which is that one you see on the left there. Designed based on feedback received from our customers with a mix of natural and synthetic fibers and a more compact profile, Brush 28 is a shader that excels at precision application of liquids, creams, and shimmers. And again, this is a handcrafted brush made in Japan, using a blend of natural and synthetic fibers. I believe the number 2 brush, which again is the one on the left there, that one was 100% natural hair, and it had a bristle length of 10 millimeters. Oh, and I think here I was saying that Angie Hot and Flashy, I always say Angie Hot and Flashy. Her channel name is Hot and Flashy, but her name is Angie, and I think that's how they have it on the label as well. It's Angie Hot and Flashy, kind of one phrase. But anyway, she was saying how she purposefully made her brush handles longer so that they would kind of stick up in your cup or whatever, which I don't know. That was an interesting choice because if you're only using her brushes, then they're not going to stand out. They're all going to be the same height. And if you're using a mix, you probably, want to be able to locate the shorter brushes if that's what you're going for. So I'm not sure about that. Okay, so to demo these brushes, I have 2 palettes here. This is the Patrick Ta Major Dimension 2 palette, so that's the newer one that he's released. And I also have the Huda Beauty Rose Quartz palette, and these are both palettes that I purchased during the Sephora Spring VIB sale. So I wanted to try out some of these newer shadows using these different brushes. And I think I was just seeing that there was some sweating or something on one of those cream shades, so I just was taking a look at that. Okay, so taking the Patrick Ta palette first, I have an unprimed arm here. I'm removing the watch so that I have more swatching room. So it looks like first off I'm taking the Angie brush, which is entirely synthetic, going into that first shade in the upper right hand corner. And this is a dry brush. So not a ton of payoff with that one. Going into that same shade with the Rephr number 28, which is the new one to me. I think that brush was a lot better at picking up pigment, especially with some of these more textured shadows. And then finally going in with the Rephr number 21, which is what I have been using for my recent swatch videos. So again, dry brushes and an unprimed arm. So yeah, so the Rephr 28 I think was the best, followed possibly by the Rephr number 21, and then I think the Angie brush was the least successful in picking up with the dry brush. So then trying to use the brushes damp, so I sprayed them with the Tarte Maracuja Miracle Mist, and again going in with the Angie brush, this time it's a damp brush, into that first shade. So I think that was a little bit better at applying the pigment and kind of foiling it. Spraying the Rephr number 28 brush here. These are very interesting textures of shadow. So I wouldn't say that this Patrick Ta palette is typical maybe of like shimmer or metallic shades. So each formula is going to kind of behave a little bit differently and do better or worse depending on the application method. But you can see I was really able to kind of build up the opacity of the pigment with this brush and create like a really high foiled look using that one. And that was a damp brush. So again, last one here, the Rephr number 21. This is a damp brush. So again, the damp brushes I think did better overall compared to the dry brushes, and I think the Rephr brushes were more successful, at least in terms of how I like these types of shades to look on my lid than the Angie brush. So right here I'm using the Sigma Switch, which is a silicone like brush pad basically. So I'm just wiping the brushes on that to remove the pigment. I should have done a finger swatch as well, but I'm not sure if I remember to do that. Okay, so here I'm just kind of, I think, explaining the concept store from Rephr and how it works. So basically Rephr has a certain number of brushes available for usually 40% off, between 40 and 50% off in their concept store. And what they ask in exchange for that discount is that you leave feedback, which, as I alluded to with one of those brush descriptions, they kind of modify their brushes over time in exchange for, or in responding to feedback. And I think I also mentioned earlier that they do have some site-wide sales periodically, so even if the particular brush you're interested in isn't available, then if you are patient, it will usually come to the concept store at some time or other. Right now, as I'm doing this voiceover, there is the number 21 brush that I just showed you. It looks like the eyelash curler is still in the concept store. One thing I think I may have mentioned is that if you do purchase from Rephr and you leave the feedback, I think after so many feedback forms, you can basically get any brush that they sell at a discount. So that's another way to get their brushes at a reduced price. So obviously I do really like Rephr's brushes. Again, not sponsored by them, or I don't receive PR, so I've purchased all of their brushes. I think for the most part I've purchased all of them at a discount. So I think especially for the discounted price, it's hard to find a better quality brush. So for the rose quartz palette here, trying a different formula. So again, unprimed arm. I had dampened these brushes, but I think I will be going in with a dry brush to start with. Okay, this might be where I decide to do a finger swatch. Or I'm just showing you the texture of the shadow. So I think in general the rose quartz shadows are, I'd say stiffer, but they're, I think, just very silicone heavy. They're not as crumbly. Okay, there's a finger. Yes, okay, so here is the finger swatch, just for comparison. And a lot of times, and I've said this before, what I will do is use a brush to kind of get the general outline and location of the shade. And I think I was saying there that that foiled swatch with the wet brush, I think actually kind of built up more, was more kind of foiled or metallic. But yeah, anyway, I will use a brush to kind of get the general outlines, and then if I want to kind of amp up the payoff, I can kind of tap or go over it with a finger. So fingers are a great tool for applying metallic shadows in general. If you don't want to use your finger for whatever reason, if you have nails, that kind of thing, if you purchase those little sponge tip applicators, or use them from a different palette that you may have, those are a pretty good approximation for your finger. And I think you can get those in packs from like Ulta or the drugstore. Okay, so I swatched that one shade. I don't know if I ultimately decide to go with that one. Okay, so I'm just testing the brush to see if it's damp. All right, we are going to be swatching that shade in the upper left-hand corner there. So this shade I think is really just more of, I guess I would classify it as shimmer. It's not really like a metallic foily type shade. So all of those swatches are fairly similar. All right, and then using a finger to swatch that shade there, which you can see has that kind of real metallic foily reflect. Okay, so maybe I'm just swatching a few different shades to kind of compare the finish. It's been a while since I filmed this, as you can tell. I think I'm removing those initial swatches And then I will kind of go in again with the brushes into those other shades. And of course, cleaning the brushes. All right, so making sure the brushes are dry, and again, going into that kind of super foily shade with the Angie brush. So I think that brush did a decent job with that shadow. Going in with the Rephr number 28. And then finally the Rephr number 21. So you can kind of see the differences there. They're pretty slight. I think maybe the Rephr number 21 kind of has the most shine, but I'd say all of those are pretty similar, and I haven't measured the width of the different brushes, but it looks like the Rephr number 21, the swatch was widest anyway. So I think this was kind of an interesting shade to swatch with, because I think after the Patrick Ta palette, I was kind of really sold on the Rephr number 28. But that just kind of goes to show you that different formulas like different application methods or tools better than others. All right, well, I guess that's the only swatch I did there. So here I just observed that the Angie brush was kind of similar to this Lancome concealer brush that I had. So it's a synthetic brush, kind of a paddle shaped, similar overall size. And I think I do experiment with using that brush, the Lancome concealer brush, but I think, as you'll see, the Angie brush did better than that one. But if you already have a concealer brush like that one from Lancome, maybe just give it a try on your lids for some of these kind of foily metallic shadows to see if you kind of like the effect or how you can use it, that kind of thing, to see if maybe it might be worth investing in the Angie one. Or adding it to your collection anyway. So yeah, so not an identical swatch, but I think on the lids you could get a very similar effect. Okay, so that was it for my swatch demo for those eye brushes, and now I think we are getting back into the main application portion. So I will be using a lot of products that I picked up in the Sephora sale. I never did kind of a dedicated haul video, although I will probably show you everything I purchased in a second video that I may or may not film tonight. But for primer, the first product I want to use here is the Saie, what is this called? Glowy Super Gel. So from what I understand, this is kind of a do-it-all type product. You can use it as a highlighter, as a primer. You can mix it in with your foundation, that kind of thing. So this is in the shade Star Glow, and it is 1/2 ounce. So this is the travel size. It has a little pump like so. And I haven't played with this yet, so yeah, I think I can definitely get away with that kind of all over the face. And normally I do just apply primer with my fingers. I like a kind of more moisturizing primer. I like the smell of this. There's something very kind of nostalgic about it to me. Kind of smells like, I don't know, there was this antique store I remember visiting as a kid, so that's kind of what it smells like. So I didn't do half my face, but hopefully you You can see compared to my neck, or maybe I'll insert like a before shot. So yeah, I think that's a nice level of luminosity. Like it doesn't look too kind of metallic or shimmery. It just kind of gives a nice like dewy look to the skin. Okay, and for correctors, so my go-to is the Charlotte Tilbury corrector, and I usually pat this in with my finger. I think I will use that Angie brush under one of my eyes for concealer, and then I'll show you kind of how I think I might use it the majority of the time as well. Okay, so I've dampened my beauty blender, and I don't really have a new versus old comparison for you with this step. I'll just go ahead and use my Makeup Forever Reboot, which is kind of a go-to for me as well. So I usually just kind of dot the product around. Try not to get it in my hair. And then I like to take the beauty blender like so and just start bouncing away. That went on really nicely over that Saie kind of primer. And with brows, I typically just rely on some kind of brow gel, tinted brow gel, so I can just use the spoolie in the product. So for concealer, I have another new product to me. This is the KVD Good Apple, and I have it in the shade Light 107. I didn't purchase this from Sephora. I actually got it while KVD was having their own sale around the time of the Sephora sale, maybe right before. So this is going to be a first impression for me. Interesting little doe foot. And I'll do on my left side. I'll have to keep this straight here. So normally what I do is I use my finger and kind of spread the product out. I think that's an okay shade. I knew that this ran a little light, so I didn't go for the lightest shade. And then I'll use the tip of my beauty blender. So for my foundation, normally I use the fat end. For my concealer, usually I'll use the little tip and just blend that out. I think I actually like that. I do have dry under eyes, so I'm always looking for something that doesn't exacerbate dryness, and of course filming it's a little hard to see. So when I looked in my makeup mirror, I could see that it was kind of maybe clinging to some dry patches. Hopefully you can see that. It's not an absolute deal breaker, but maybe just something to be aware of. I do have dry under eyes, and I do kind of suffer from eczema and that kind of thing. So I think for this under eye, I'm gonna do the same thing where I just kind of spread it out a little bit. And then I'm going to take this Angie A506 brush. Which I think is fine. Like, it does kind of spread the product out nicely. It's not the same shape, but I guess I kind of remember when there was a Sephora concealer brush that everyone kind of went gaga for. I think maybe this brush helped keep a little bit more of the coverage versus the Beauty Blender. Interesting. Might keep playing with that. Okay, so let's zoom out just a tad, and I'm going to do contour next. So I like to use the KVD gel contour, and I like to take it under my chin. And then I'll use this BK 101 brush that I showed you, which again, I think is designed to be a concealer brush, but I really like it for this product and this purpose. And once that is blended, I'll take the same product and go underneath my cheekbones. And then I'll take it so that the shorter end is facing up, and I'll blend upward. And it kind of almost, I guess, half bronzes my cheek in addition to kind of contouring. Just adds more shape and that kind of thing. And then for my nose, I like to use the Fenty Matchstick in Amber because it's a little easy to kind of dispense a controlled amount. So I kind of just take the edge of it and just go down the tip of my nose. I actually saw people kind of doing a little bit of that as well. So this is what I thought I might use this brush for specifically, because I had been using this brush, and that would be this side, right? So I would just kind of blend it, you know, like so. And because this is a lighter kind of contour shade, it's a little forgiving, I guess, but I thought this might be nice for just kind of a more controlled application. In a way, I think maybe this brush, because it still might have some like residual KVD product on it, maybe it deposits a little bit. And then just blend out. I think I might prefer the old side better, but again, I don't know if that's because I'm adding additional product. I'm just gonna put a tiny bit, yeah, this side. Now my nose looks crooked. I think I might prefer the other BK brush, to be honest. And that might just be, again, because it had other product on it. So let's see, for powder. So for under my eyes, I think I'll just use my By Terry Hydro Powder, and I will go ahead and use the Saie brush, if I can find it. So this is just like the little travel size, but it's definitely big enough to kind of get your like smaller powder brush in. And I like to just make sure that the under eye is crease free. So I guess for an older style, I'll use I have the Suqqu brush, which is what Lisa Eldridge always called the like cat paw brush, something like that. I don't know, this is like my favorite. I really like the e.l.f. brush. I think this is squirrel hair maybe. So I really like this e.l.f. small tapered brush, which I'm pretty sure is cruelty free. But I think they discontinued this, which just seems strange. Because I know like Emily Noel has sung its praises many a time. So for powdering the face, I'm going to use the Saie powder, which On a side note, it always amuses me when I kind of look back at my Sephora VIB sale purchases, because that is when I purchased the most at Sephora over the course of the year. And it seems like, especially this time around, it was kind of a mix between products I'd had my eye on. So I'm just using this in the cap. Products I'd had my eye on for a while, and whatever the hot kind of current product is. More thunder. And I think, you know, Saie is kind of having a moment, but I think this powder in particular, I forgot to conceal. Wonder if I go in with that KVD on top, if it'll do okay. Yeah, I know Amanda Z really talked about that product, the Saie product, and Michelle Wong talked about it a lot, but then I've watched more recent videos. I think State of Kate, for example, like she was saying how it kind of, you know, changed her complexion maybe. And for concealer, by the way, for spot concealing, I just kind of like to pat over to blend, because I want to keep the coverage kind of concentrated. Yeah, and so Amanda Z was really talking about this, but then I feel like more recently she's been a little kind of, oh, I don't know, maybe it does darken your foundation. I don't know if I really see a huge difference in tone on my face. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I mean, I've liked it, and I do have dry skin, so now I'm just using this kind of random MOTD brush that I got from an Ipsy subscription. This is a bronzer brush, or at least intended to be, but I don't know, I just kind of like its fluffiness. Coincidentally, talking about brushes that emulate animals, Kate the Great had talked about this BK102 brush as being like the bunny on your face brush. And I mean, it is soft enough. I guess I don't know. I don't know if at the time I was using like separate under eye and face powder brushes. And so this didn't really suit my purposes for everything I wanted to use it for. I guess there's not a huge difference between these two, but I don't know. I never really bonded with this brush as much. I'm using my Rephr number 22 brush here. Okay, so for blush, I think I'm going to use this Hourglass Ambient Strobe Lighting Blush in Iridescent Flash, which looks like so. So I kind of wanted to use a blush that, you know, has some pigment to it, I think. So using my Rephr number 5, which I think I've gotten off as much of the excess powder as I can, I'm going to use that on my left cheek. I think that's really pretty. It looks a bit scary in the pan, but I think it actually kind of goes on pretty nicely. All right, let's try this Angie blush brush here to see how this does. Okay, I'm just tapping it a little bit on the back of my hand to see how this does. All right, so yeah. I think it did go on a tad bit more pigmented with the Angie brush, which I find actually a little bit surprising because I always think of natural hair brushes as picking up product better than synthetic, but I'm gonna go ahead and kind of go in a little bit and build this up. And I do go a little bit heavier handed with blush while I'm filming too, because otherwise it just doesn't show up. Yeah, so for every day I might actually prefer the Rephr just because I think you can get a more kind of, I guess, subtle application depending on the pigment level of the blush that you're using. And if you feel like you're getting a little kind of out of hand, you can either take, you know, your powder brush and just go over it to kind of diffuse. I think that kind of toned it down a little bit. I'm not sure if I got the placement the same. Like this side, I think I maybe got it a little bit lower in here. So next up we'll use the highlighter. So on the new side, I'll use the wing Goss and kind of focus on the lightest 2 shades of the Charlotte Tilbury. And just go in like so. And then on the other side, with the ABH brush, I'll kind of do the same. We're kind of straddling the 2 different and sometimes I'll kind of blend downward a little bit. I mean, I don't think there's a huge difference there. I mean, I guess if I really wanted to be precise, I could just kind of, you know, really paint it on, but you could definitely just use an eyeshadow brush for that as well. Okay, so for eyeshadow, in the interest of time, I am going to apply my primer and my kind of matte shadows, and then I'll come back on for the like shimmer shadow application where I'm using new brushes.
I'm staring through your window, looking up at the stars, up at the stars. I'm caught inside a loop where I can get to your heart, get to your heart. Ooh, you're letting your fears take hold, let them take control, and it's making me crazy. If you could only look at me, you know how I feel, know how I feel. Oh, see how much I want it, see how bad I need it. You gotta look into my eyes. That's how much I want it, that's how bad I need it. You gotta look into my eyes. Think twice before you let me go. My eyes are mirrors of my soul. See how much I want it.
Okay, so I think that is good enough for the eyes. So I'm using the Patrick Ta Major Dimension 2 palette, which I got from the Sephora sale. So I'll just walk you through what I did here and the brushes I used. So I used the Fenty eye primer, and I always like to set my primer. So I used the By Terry powder again all over the lid. And then I like to go in all over that with some kind of lighter matte shade. So I used this one down here, and I applied that with the Sigma Large Fluff E50 because it just kind of covers a lot of surface area. And then I think I went in with this Sonia G Mini Booster just because I wasn't sure how pigmented these shadows would be. So I went in with this shadow here, and later I went in with this shadow here to kind of deepen things up a bit. And underneath the lash line, I used their flat definer brush, which I really like because for me, putting a little bit of eyeshadow underneath the lash line, it helps define the eyes, but it also really helps my concealer from creasing. I could just go in with a powder like this because a larger powder brush typically won't get like right up under the lash line. But I find that if I put some kind of powder, either eyeshadow or setting powder, it does help prevent creasing. So I used this to apply, I think it was a mixture of these two that I put underneath the lashes. And then I also used this jumbo blender, and I would go into this shade here and kind of go around the edges just to make sure that everything was nicely blended. This brush for me almost acts like an eraser or some sort of airbrush tool where if you have anything harsh that needs to be blended out, it just really takes care of it. So really enjoy the Sonia G brushes that I have. They are more expensive, but I think they are worth the investment if you do like natural hair brushes. Okay, so in the B-roll that I filmed, I compared the Angie brush to the Rephr 28, which is new to me, and the Rephr 21, which is not new to me. So I think based on that, I'm just going to use the Angie on my right eye, and I'll use the Rephr on my left eye. So going into this shade here, this is kind of a chunkier formula. So I am just going in, it's kicking up a bit. I'm just going in with a dry brush. Honestly, I think a finger is probably the best for this type of shadow. You can see with a dry brush, it just doesn't really do what you want it to. Okay, let's go in with this number 28 brush. I think that did a little bit better at distributing the shadow, but I think wetting the brush is definitely going to help. So I'll go ahead and do that with the Angie. And I'm not sure if Angie has even like reviewed this palette from Patrick Ta. I seem to recall her liking the Dior formula, which is much more, not as kind of a foily metallic as the Patrick Ta. So some shadows just don't lend themselves to brushes the way that kind of more traditional formulations do. Yeah, so I think it did better with this Rephr brush, but I think really what you need here is a finger, and just kind of working that in. I think there is some fallout, so maybe do your eyes first if that is concerning to you, especially if you go in with one of those like deeper shadows. So on a side note, I think this is a really pretty palette. I see a little bit of fallout, but not too bad. I'm not sure if I like it more than the original or less, but I think it's really pretty. I think these colors work well with my eye color. You can see some sparkle down here. All right, so I think I'll call it there for the shadow. And for eyeliner, like I mentioned, I have this new BK brush versus what I've been using is like the Sigma E65 small angle. So you can see the difference in size there. The BK one is very tiny. Okay, so how I like to do my liner typically is to take, I guess I'll try this Rock and Coal from Charlotte Tilbury. So I like to apply it to my lash line. And then I'll take the liner brush and just run it along the liner just to make sure it's kind of smooth and maybe a little bit diffused. And then if I feel like it that day, I'll take the liner, and I know some people like try to draw the liner out based on what product is already there. works a little bit. Sometimes I'll just take the pencil though and kind of run my brush along it. Try and pick up the product. And then usually I'll kind of use the length of the brush kind of as my guide and then just draw it and connect it. And then just kind of fill in. So I have hooded eyes, so I'm just looking for like the, you know, barest amount of lengthening and that kind of thing on the lash line. So I'm not doing anything kind of super crazy here. I think that did a good job though. All right, so other eye, same kind of deal. And using the Sigma brush this time. Yeah, definitely some fallout from that Patrick Ta. I think honestly, I would just recommend going in with the finger from the get-go. And I guess I'll try and kind of replicate the same. Not too far off just based on that. So when I apply it using product that I pick up, I'm having the longer side be closest to my eyebrow. So the longest side is facing up. I might actually prefer the BK. Like I think, you know, the smaller the brush, the more precise you can be. And with my hooded lids, I think the little BK wing is just a little bit more, a little cuter, a little bit more precise. So I'm just trying to kind of clean up this wing using a little Q-tip, and you know, it's going to be doubly difficult to kind of get a even look to the lids because I'm using two different brushes. I don't always have that excuse. These little Q-tips, by the way, you can get from Ulta. They have like a kind of paddle shape on one side and then like a really kind of like firm point to the other. Okay, so for my bottom lashes, I think you can also get those little sponge tip applicators from Ulta or from like the drugstore in general, where if you don't want to use your finger on the eyelid to apply shadow, then you can use those. So for lash curler, neither of these is really new to me, but I thought I might just do a side-by-side comparison of the Rephr lash curler on my right versus the Surratt on my left. So
I'm staring through your window, looking up at the stars, up at the stars. I'm caught inside a loop where I can get to your heart, get to your heart. Ooh, you're letting your fears take hold, let them take control, and it's making me crazy.
So I don't know if there's like a huge difference. And of course my lashes aren't identical. You guys can let me know if you see a big difference. I think the biggest difference I notice is just the feeling while I'm using them. So the Surratt just feels a lot kind of, I don't know, more substantial in the hand. So I think I prefer it for that reason, but I think, you know, the Rephr does a perfectly good job. And I've tried pretty much, I think, every high-end lash curler on the market, like Shiseido, Kevin Kwan, that kind of thing. So I think it definitely stands up to those. Just a little mascara there. All right, and to keep it brief here at the end, I'm just gonna pop some MAC Fix Plus on. And if there are any spots or whatever that I want to kind of blend, I'll just take the Beauty Blender and go over that. And then just taking a lip gloss. This one is Flush Fantasy from Pat McGrath. Just something nice and nude. All right, so I think that's gonna do it. I hope you guys enjoyed this look at some new brushes that I brought into my collection and kind of my techniques in terms of applying makeup, what brushes I like to use. I think as far as the new ones that I brought in, I think I'm most excited about that little BK brush because I think for getting a little wing on my eye shape, it's going to be really helpful. This one is kind of a more blown out, almost like shadowy wing. That one's a little bit more kind of precise. So I really like that. As far as the other things I purchased, for the Rephr brushes, I didn't use this cheek brush, although I think it will come in handy. It's good to have. The Rephr number 2 brush was a repurchase. Really enjoying that new Rephr brush, although for this type of eyeshadow formula that I use, I just don't know that anything besides your finger is really gonna do what you want it to. The soap, like I mentioned, I think it did a decent enough job, although I think the packaging could maybe be improved, or at least the packaging options. Yeah, I think that covered it. The soap, the number 2 was a repurchase. The number 24 I haven't tried yet, although I think it's promising, and I liked the 28. The BK brushes, I think the concealer brush, which everyone has been talking about, I think, you know, it's well-deserved hype, basically. I think I will get use out of that brush in some capacity, whether it be underneath my eyes or like on my nose for contour, that kind of thing. Although I think, you know, the Beauty Blender does a good enough job. But yeah, I think the brush maybe kept a little bit more of the coverage. So that's kind of food for thought there. I thought the blush brush was nice. It kind of in shape reminds me a bit of the Rephr number 4. This is a natural hair brush. So this is kind of your more typical blush brush shape, although I think the Angie brush is bigger, kind of has a bigger surface area, so it kind of diffuses the blush a little bit better while you're applying it. So yeah, so I was happy to try that. Like I said, the BK 208, the Precision Ingold, I think is definitely a winner. The shimmer brush from Angie Hot and Flashy, I probably could have passed on. I don't think it really did anything beyond what my other brushes can do. So I think that was it for BK Beauty. We had the blush, the concealer, this shimmer brush, and the angled brush. There's the concealer. So yeah, so that was my BK Beauty haul. Yeah, the Rephr haul was these 3 along with the soap. And then like I showed you, I got this one Wayne Goss brush, which I've enjoyed, and also this Saie brush. So yeah, I think that's gonna do it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments down below. And until next time, I hope you guys are all doing well and staying safe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.